Hi, I'm Leanne Ely. I'm a nutritionist, a New York Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. I didn't realize, I just recognized that yes, it affects you, and yes, it affects the ability, your thoughts and everything else. But there is a whole bunch of studies that they've done, including in Yale, about how emotional intelligence absolutely affects your job. Did you know that? It affects your job. Hey, Kathy. So we've been talking about it all week. First of all, we know what it is. We understand what it is and how it can be developed. We understand all of that. We also how it affects everything that we think about, because if we put emotional intelligence into the equation, then we understand different ways to process things. We don't just go crazy town, not necessarily. Anyway, hey, Donna, I'm glad you're here. And we also understand how it impacts our reasoning, the ability to love with your whole heart, and how to navigate sticky situations. Anyone here ever been in a sticky situation? Pinkies up. I'll tell you what, we all have. And this is where we separate the sheep from the goats, isn't it? Because a sticky situation for somebody who is not emotionally intelligent means they're going to go off on you, means they're going to just give up, they're going to just, pack up their tent and go. When you're emotionally intelligent, you're going to give it a chance to unfold and give it an opportunity to have the story told, right? You hear things from all sides. You don't just knock it down, right? That's how it works. So it's that emotional intelligence gives us the ability to read others as well as ourselves. But again, we still have to be careful with that, because it doesn't mean that we're clairvoyant and we are godlike. It just means that it helps us, equips us in that whole game of the way that we, are together. Isn't it true? Hi there. Oh, look at there's Juanita and Jennifer in the house. I'm so glad you're here. So most of us overestimate ourselves, though, when it comes to understanding emotional intelligence. Isn't that funny? Mark Brackett, he is the director of the Yale Center of Emotional Intelligence. Okay. He says that maybe we all need to take a breath and invest a little more time schooling ourselves on what emotional intelligence is and what it is not. Because it's not the magic panacea to all ills. It just means that we are better able and better equipped to handle things when we are emotionally intelligent. Hi, Alice. So I think that's important, because the studies show that emotional intelligence on the job is a better indicator than career success, than even an impressive resume or where you went to school, or a high IQ even. How about that? Think about that for a minute. By taking the time to invest in yourself to become emotionally intelligent, that is way more important than your sterling resume, where you went to school, or even that you have a high IQ. Because emotional intelligence is your coping mechanism. When you cope in a way that is intelligent, then you get to reap the rewards from that. You get better outcomes on everything. Sarah Canaday, she's an author and a speaker, says that we may hire for technical talents, but we're often fired because we lack emotional intelligence. And I think about that right now. Back in, just looking over my careers that were out there in the world. Hey, Angie and Lucy. Being out in the world. And there were other times that I wasn't, the dinner diva, but I actually had jobs and careers and things like that. And I think about it, and I think about those people who had the skills that they needed for their jobs, but they didn't have the wherewithal to be able to deal with a small society, and that's just what the job site is, right? It's a small society. People hang out at the water cooler. There's a little chit chat going on in the kitchen, right? You've been into an office. There's cubicles, there's offices, there's the big, bullpen or whatever. There's everything in a job situation. Well, if you're working in restaurants, of course, it looks a little bit different, but I'm just talking about a typical office, right? And in that situation, when you learn how to navigate, watch your tongue, watch the way that you handle things, take on additional responsibility, not freak out when somebody hands you something that needs to get changed or criticizes something that you do, all of that goes either for you or against you. So I think that's really fascinating. And, a lot of times what people think is that emotional intelligence just means you're extra nice. That emotional intelligence just means that you're easy to get along with. Or it creates a more smiley version of yourself, perhaps. That's absolutely not true, because here's what emotional intelligence does. This is what the studies tell us. It helps us to be a better collaborator. Well, I don't know about you, but in a team situation, when you're working with somebody on a team and you're collaborating, you don't just dismiss someone all the time. You listen to everyone's ideas and you start to collaborate and put things together based on these people's ideas. It's an absolutely brilliant way of doing business, and it's a brilliant way of allowing everybody to have a voice and feel included. Collaboration is how you get to a better idea of something. So even if a work member on your team has a really good idea, it doesn't mean that you can't collaborate with their idea, because you could bring something new and a new perspective to the table. And emotionally intelligent people understand that. They're not so possessive over their ideas. They're also not afraid to influence other people and say, well, I just want to talk to you about this particular idea, because I think if we took this all the way, it's going to completely change the way that we do X, Y, and Z. They're not afraid that they have influence, and they use it. They're also not afraid to communicate, and they communicate in a way that's healthy, that's intelligent, and that's also considerate. I mean, doesn't it sound like we're talking about people we want to hang out with, right? That's what happens when we become emotionally intelligent, and we manage ourselves better, our jobs better, our relationships better, and all the way through. So when we're looking at our own emotional intelligence, how do we know that we're succeeding with bringing emotional intelligence to the job? How do we know? Well, a couple of things. The first one is that we have our own idea of self-motivation. I'll tell you, nothing lights me up than self-motivation. When somebody says, oh, I know what I'm going to do, I've got an idea. So you manage yourself better when you are a collaborator. You're better at self-motivation. And you realize too, and this I would say about everybody, who works here anyway, it's that, it's not about the title or the money or even the job. It's doing a good job. It's putting your name on it. It's bringing something to the table that's worthy of being brought to the table. It's understanding. It's allowing for it. It's getting it done, and making sure that it gets done. And if it's not your direct responsibility, boy, are they jumping into it. I love it. I love this because it puts our team in a place of constant movement. And, that's what you need. You cannot kill momentum in a company. Otherwise, you're constantly starting over. And it's true with everything. You know how it feels like you get started, you're going, you're sprinting, you're exercising, then all of a sudden everything comes to a screeching stop, and then you got to start over. Well, when we are emotionally intelligent, we recognize it's just for a minute, we get to pick it up and get going again. And figuring it out, getting it done, that's what emotionally intelligent women do. Emotionally intelligent women are also, on the job, self-aware. Of course they're self-aware, because they're not oriented just toward themselves, but how is this going to affect everybody on my team? How is this going to work for the company? Having an eye toward doing a good job and getting the work done, and how does this affect everyone, is what emotionally intelligent women do. And we know this. We know that our affections, that our actions are always going to affect others. There is a ripple effect on every word that we say, every action that we take. Emotionally intelligent women get this, and they plug that in not only to their job, but to their career, to their each person that they work with. And they're tender-hearted enough to be able to pick up if something's not quite right, and they accept feedback. They accept feedback, even if it's something they don't want to hear, even if it's said in a way that they don't want to hear it. We get this too. We work with an agency that helps us with our tech stuff. And a couple of weeks ago, they said something I didn't really care for. I think Jenny would say the same thing to it. But you know what? It was cool, because from that, I was able to, instead of be all defensive, I was like, okay, so what do they need then from us, right? What was the bottom line from that conversation? They needed us to be more succinct, is what it was. Less detail, more succinct. Fine. That's how we move intelligently. That's how we get things done. And that's how things don't get stuck in perpetual project mode. Projects are meant to be started. There's a middle place. There's times for assessment. There's times for taking a look at it and saying, what needs to happen now. But there's also a time where that project needs to be done. It shouldn't go on and on and on and on. It needs to be started. It needs to be looked at, evaluated, and it needs to be finished. Because that's how we move along. That's how we get to the next thing. That's how companies succeed. That's how individuals succeed within companies as well. The other thing is emotionally intelligent people, women especially, who work in the workplace, are positive. Well, that just kind of goes without saying, isn't it? I will tell you this right now. There's flexibility on our team. We're able to move with incredible flexibility. We're able to give each other grace. We're open-minded, not easily offended, or at least I have never heard of it. I mean, if you guys have a problem with me, you just come to me and say something. That's all. I always say that because I don't want to be, if I offend in any way, I don't want to offend anybody. And sometimes I know I can open my mouth and insert foot. Good at that. Really good at that. But I also recognize and see that I have positive members on my team, and that makes all the difference in how I feel when I collaborate with these team members, when I see them self-motivating and doing things, when I see the creativity and the orderliness that things get done, and the organization and all the juggling that has to happen in order for us to get things done. It's crazy. And you know what I've noticed too? That when the positivity is in place, not only it's allowing for curiosity, for creativity, for figuring out things, for not just shutting it down and saying, there's just no way it can't happen. They're problem solvers. And being a problem solver only comes, I believe, with emotional intelligence, because otherwise you're too busy pouting, too busy not, having your feelings hurt because somebody didn't say something in a way that didn't hit you in a tender spot. We don't need to be like that. We need to toughen up a little bit and pull our big girl panties up and just say, what do you mean by that? If there's something going on, of course. But this is not what this is about. This is about being emotionally intelligent on the job, and how that affects your job performance, everyone around you. And it changes the whole dynamic of the team, changes everything. Also, emotionally intelligent women on the job are empathetic, because, you're going to be respected for being emotionally intelligent. You can't help it, because you have self-respect. You also respect others. And because you respect others, you strive to understand, you go to bat for your other colleagues, and you are a valued team member because you value your team members as well. Has anyone ever worked with somebody who didn't? Do you know what that felt like? You felt like, this person is just rubbing up against me. This is just total abrasiveness and abrasion. I don't want it, right? But here's the thing with emotional intelligence. When emotionally intelligent women, number 5, rolls with it, you know that you're going to be able to get the thing done. They roll with it. They roll with the change because things do change. All of a sudden, well, there's new standards. I'm sorry, you guys. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean to change everything, but here it all is. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. We changed from a different credit. We had a merchant account for, I don't know, close to 20 years. And when it was time to change over, boy, did I want to put my feet down and say, oh, no, we're not doing that. But the simplicity and the ease of accomplishment and having some experts talk to me about this made that decision so much easier. I rolled with it. I went, okay, let's do it. It helped me to handle the change, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. But it's sort of like clutter. Sometimes you just want to hold on to something because you've always had it, right? But there's other times where you just have to take a look at it and say, this has no reason for being here. We got to let it go. The thing is, and this is the bottom line, that emotional intelligence is the ability to turn intention into action. Whether you're in the workplace, whether you're at home, whatever it is that you're doing. And it also calls you to a higher level of coping and not procrastinating necessarily, but actually coping. And it also takes you to the place as well as not running away from it, not procrastinating, not putting it off, but actually doing the job and getting right into it and getting it done with a decent attitude as well. Emotional intelligence calls us to this, and it helps women to succeed, whatever your job might be. Maybe your job is, you run a whole organization. Maybe your job is that you're a part of a team. Maybe your job is that you're home taking care of a disabled child or a elderly parent or a bunch of little kids or kids with disabilities or whatever. You know what? It's still a job, and we're still called to do it to the best of our ability. And when we are emotionally intelligent, our capacity to be able to handle things easier and well and in a way that's uplifting for all completely shifts. Completely shifts. Emotionally intelligent women, that's what this world needs more of. We need a whole lot more of that. And I'm going to tell you something else. One thing that I know, emotional intelligence also makes us much happier because we've got room for everyone in our hearts when we're like that. Don't you love that? I think so. I think it's a great idea. I sure hope you enjoyed that. And I hope you see how this flexibility of emotional intelligence, how it just completely spills over and onto and into everything that we do. Whether you have a career or not, you're still doing a job. You're still doing a job. And the way that you do it counts. Your ripple effect counts. Because you're here on purpose and for purpose. Let's make it a pleasant time, shall we? What do you think? Peace be with you.
Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.